everybody, I'm Eric Murphy. It is Friday, and my goodness, I think this is the fastest turnaround I've got going. I'm really, really excited to talk to this person. This is not Murphy's Law today. Today is a conversation with a Christian. I've been doing those when I can on Fridays, and I'm really excited to have this person. With me today is Nick Snapp. Nick, how's it going, man?
This is going great, Eric. I'm glad we can make this happen.
Me too. So for people who don't know who you are, who are you?
I am I got a lot going on, but I guess in reference to what we're doing here today, I host a podcast called Miracles and Atheists. It used to be a live stream where I used to get on Facebook for 4 hours, and I'd have 3 different segments, an hour and 15 each. And we would we'd bring someone that had experienced what they would consider a miracle in their life, and co-host atheist who was you at least 2 times, maybe even more, because you'd pop in and out, and you'd ask tough questions, and we'd have a respectful dialogue. It's storytelling time. It's a little bit of apologetics, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was years ago. In fact, I'm caught up on my cord here. There we okay, there. See, this is what happens. So when Talk Heathen was first starting, you were starting. And I remember both of us were talking about, starting new channels and kind of the trouble and what we wanted to get out of it. And we wanted to have,
right.
we talked about having civil discourse. We talked about having this kind of respectful dialogue. And it was fun to kind of see my counterpart on the other side trying to do the same thing. But yeah, your 4-hour format was grueling, man. I don't know how you did it.
Oh man, I don't know how I did it. Looking back on that, it ended up being a logistics nightmare. And towards the end, as you can imagine, when you're trying to find people, discussions, especially very specific niches, 6 people during, I think I did it on a Thursday morning. It's an impossibility. I mean, it's got to be divine intervention for something to pull that thing off. And so at the end, I got to say, no disrespect to anybody that was on the live stream. So it was in a live stream format. Now it's in the format of a podcast. But people weren't who I thought they were, or maybe even just treading maybe who they said they were. They weren't exactly the types of guests that I had on the end. And if it was just a pure product of a 4-hour live stream with 6 guests trying to make all that work at once, so it was a logistics nightmare. Got to be too much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I totally feel you, man. Even when you're trying to do it the best you can, it's so easy to accidentally create a dumpster fire, where people are strawmanning each other and ad homing, and it's just like, wait, where did the discussion go? Where did the empathy go? Where did the charitable listening go?
The civil discourse, yes. I thought we did pretty good. I think that people get bold, like you and I were talking last night, because just a spoiler alert, you're going to be on Miracles and Atheists pretty soon. But, people get really, really bold behind their keyboards. So I found that every time we on the video, everything was perfectly fine. I mean, I could see you got worked up a little bit, which is expected because, you get bold and you're passionate, and that's what we want. But then behind the comments, you know how it goes. People it's like this vomit of just random thought in subject matter that doesn't have too much to do with what you're talking about. And so, but I did like the fact that as this thing progressed, we developed a culture of mutual respect. And so, like, I would make a comment to somebody that was typing behind the keyboards, and I remember a couple of times I got an apology, like, I'm sorry. It was just, that was awesome. And so that's really what we're going for.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I have since cooled down. Turns out after you engage with the topic enough, you kind of chill out a bit. But yeah, if you want to see, for people who want to see young, hot-headed, brand new to being a content creator, Eric, head over to his channel. Actually, I took some screenshots of your website. On the left is your new setup as the podcast, and on the right is all of the live streams that you did, and there are a lot of recognizable faces in there.
Yeah. That was 36 hours of content.
Yeah. You know, go ahead.
No, it was short lived. I know you're probably going to ask me now, why did I stop? It wasn't just the logistics deal, because we went for about 7 months. It was, I mean, I can go into my whole story if you want to hear it.
Dude, so when you reached out to me, I was excited and super curious. So what happened to Miracles and Atheists? What happened to Nick?
Indeed. Okay. Well, I gotta come back to how it all started. So I'm going to get into some Christian stuff, and
Okay.
your audience take it however you want to take it. I try not to. I don't get easily offended. Let's just put it that way. And I'm sure you don't either. I know, having worked with you a couple years back, but I went to church for 37 years, and I consider myself only a born-again Christian for the last 4.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit eye-opening for me. And it was, for me personally, Eric, it was giving up control. And when that happened, I do believe that I became, like the Bible says, a new creation. And so I'm sitting here in this state of all I could think about now is Jesus. I didn't mention any of the stuff on Miracles and Atheists because I had a fear, and I vocalized this time. I said, out of the people that make me the most uncomfortable, and you've heard this before, it would be atheists. 2 years ago, there was so much intellect and so many high vocabulary words. The things that would come out of these discussions are like, man, how could I contribute to any of this stuff? I have my ideas, but they're not backed by much. And so I took it upon myself to really why do I believe what I believe? I want to learn. I want to be a truth seeker. And so,
really quickly before you go on, I just want to kind of empathize with you just a bit. As a kid, I was afraid of atheists. I was afraid of them. When I would meet one, I would look for tells, because I thought that there must be some kind of scale, some kind of horn, there's some smell of sulfur, some way of being able to really, I thought, if you have someone who is damned, and with the church that I went to,
right,
atheists didn't just not believe, atheists were working with the enemy. They were working with Satan to draw people. And so, you have this demonic servant.
Was it your mindset? Was it they were doing this intentionally?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's some big atheist, it was nuts. We were all about the satanic panic and all of that. And I know I'm taking away from your story, but I just want to empathize. Yeah, man.
It's good to know.
If you want to talk about fear of and worry about atheists, dude, I'm right. I've been there for sure.
You were the guy.
Oh, dude, I was terrified. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that insight. And so I just thought, I remember I'd watched a documentary. And so I grew up United Methodist. Okay. It was very ritualistic. What church did you grow up in, Eric?
I went to a born-again Christian church, actually. Calvary Chapel.
Non-denominational type stuff? Oh, Calvary. Okay.
Calvary Chapel called itself non-denominational when I went there, but it's kind of like a diet Pentecostal sometimes. Every once in a while, someone starts speaking in tongues. Every once in a while, people get kind of nuts there a little bit. I don't know. It was interesting. At least the one I went to.
Sorry, I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit. I feel like I got this big head as I look. Back it off a little bit, Snapp. Now, I hadn't really. It'd be a Methodist. It was like a ritualistic thing. We just kind of went to church, and there was no difference in the way I acted versus anybody else, no matter whether they were Jewish. I think I knew a lot of Jewish kids back then, and I didn't know if they were non-believers or not. In my worldview at the time as a kid, it was like everybody believed. Everybody was a Christian. That's just how I thought things were. And so there was just nothing behind what I was doing. I just went to church, my life like everybody else did. And so when I had this transformation at this point of brokenness in my life, and I won't even get into the whole deal with what I was going through, but in short, I almost lost my marriage, almost lost my kids, and I came out of a lot of that. No, but dude, it's been completely redeemed, which is it's an amazing thing. And so when I felt like when I believe I was a new Christian, you're looking at 1 Corinthians 5:17 or 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, anyone in Christ is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new is here. I couldn't do things like that when I was growing up. The first 37 years of my life, I didn't know any scripture like that. But I probably heard those sort of things, but never really even thought about it. And so now I'm at a point where I believe I'm a new creation, and all I can do is think about Jesus. That's it. Something in me switched. So I didn't know it at the time. I wouldn't say, I was born again at that particular moment, but it was a couple of years later, I'm looking at my life. I'm like, why am I so on fire for Jesus? These are the people that used to annoy me. I never wanted to be around the on fire for Jesus Christians because I felt guilty. They're doing stuff that I'm not. It's just this sort of wrestling that I used to do before I had this experience, to give you a little bit of background. And so I'm driving on a family trip to Nashville, and all of a sudden, and I had been watching a documentary. It was called The Finger of God by Darren Wilson. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And so I bring this up because I saw guys going on the street, like putting hands on people's knees, and there being some sort of instantaneous, miraculous thing. I saw like the street healing deal, and I was like, what is this? This is nothing I've had any experience with whatsoever, being in the United Methodist Church. So I just kind of got the wheels turned. I didn't do anything about it. And as I'm driving to Nashville on a family trip and by myself, I get this, whoa, I need to do a movie like that. And I need to bring 3 atheists with me. And I was like, wait a second, I'm scared of atheists. What is this? What is this thought? It was just bringing to my head. Yeah. So that happened to me.
From the secular perspective, the needing to take a new turn on things, the reinvention of self, with or without God, I got to tell you, it's a potent thing. I quit my life and moved to Austin, Texas, so that I could do this. Quit everything. Quit a lifetime's worth of friends. Quit a job with I had a great job and I didn't have any prospects out here. I just went.
We are living parallels in a strange way, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. But the idea that you were called to it is interesting for me for obvious reasons. Because
sure.
As an atheist, I hear you saying that you had a really great turn, and I want to hug you and congratulate you. And you want to give the glory to God, right?
Right, I do.
And I can't help but feel like the person I know, Nick, is selling himself short. And I don't.
I get that.
Yeah. And actually, that's the most I've ever heard of your story. When I first talked to you, you set yourself off as best you could as kind of a neutral mediator between the different speakers.
And I totally was, man. I didn't know anything about my faith at the time.
Well, from an atheist perspective, from where I was sitting, I think you did pretty well, man.
Thanks.
I do.
I'm trying to exemplify the same characteristics moving forward here, although I've grown obviously in the last 2 years. So I'll cut it short a little bit, but I had this vision for making this movie and taking it with me to the streets because I wanted to know if this was a big scam. I wanted to see if this really could happen. And who better to take with me than an atheist who's going to pick apart every single piece of that experience. But I blew it off. I said, God, if this is you calling me to do this, I'm not the guy. Just give me, sure, make $200,000 come my way, and I'll go ahead and make your movie. That's what was going on. I just blew it off, and it just, and then again, probably maybe 2 or 3 months later, I was talking to a friend of mine who started a podcast. His name's Cale. He calls it Modern Christian Men. I used to talk to him every week just to kind of pick his brain, because I felt like a baby believer, even though I've been going to church for 37 years. And he started this. He had this monster show, Eric. He had like 30,000 downloads a month. It was called Ham Radio 360. It was about like CB radio, big antennas and trucks and that kind of stuff, amateur radio. And he gave it all up to start this Modern Christian Men show. And he's telling me, it just doesn't feel right. People are coming on trying to push their books, and something's missing. I'm like, dude, what you got to do is bring on somebody that's experienced something miraculous and ask them about that. Because that's what I wanted to know about. That's my idea. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I felt God telling me, no, Nick, that's what you need to be doing. And I said, hold on a minute. I'm a podcaster. I have a podcast called the Make It Snappy Productivity Show. Hang on a second. I have a podcast called the Make It Snappy Productivity Show. And I dedicated much to that. I was completely into productivity. It's a secular show. And I knew what the commitment was. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way I could do anything like that. Go ahead.
No worries. I know that this is your testimony,
right?
But the parts of talking to God, talking to someone secular, it's just you talking to yourself in your head, which is weird.
Yeah, I get it.
But I know you do. There was one thing I wanted to ask, because it's still the name of your channel,
right?
And that is the Miracles piece.
Right.
So you believe that God can intervene?
I do.
So why don't they?
Why
doesn't God intervene?
Okay, you're talking in generalizations.
It's a problem of evil thing. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
It's a children starving and dying. Child's oncology units. Those kinds of things.
I totally want to get into that. Let me before we take. I mean, it's your show. We can talk about what you want to talk about
here.
I did want to tell you why I left.
Oh, finish. I'm sorry. Yeah, go finish your story.
And so I blew off the movie. I blew off the podcast, and then I'm sitting in church one day, and I felt, will you do a 4-hour live stream? So I'm talking to myself again from your perspective. Will you do a 4-hour live stream? I said, I can do that. And so I still blew it off for a few weeks. I ended up watching another documentary about healings and stuff. And I was like, man, I got to do something. Put out a very polarizing post on Facebook talking about, and right before that, I had been sort of chastised by an aggressive Christian. And so I used that sort of as fodder for my post. Okay. And it said something along the lines of, I'm sick of aggressive Christians. If we can't come together as a body of Christ, what do the atheists and agnostics think? I'm toying with starting a project to address this issue. If you're interested, private message me or comment below. Dude, I had nearly, I think, 250 comments and 24 private messages. People were, what's wrong, Nick? Like, I never talked about my faith. Like I said, I was nominal. I just didn't even mouth. And so people really thought that there was something wrong. And I think a couple of days later, I launched Miracles and Atheists in the live stream. So that's how that got started. Did it once, learned a ton, man. And then after 7 months, and from your perspective, talking to myself again, I felt, okay, you've learned enough. It's time to go out and start doing something. So I started hitting the streets myself to look for my own miracles. Yeah. And I did that for pretty consistently for over the past 2 years. And so now I have a little firsthand experience. So that's what I was doing. And I felt that now is the time.
How did it go?
Back. Yeah.
How did it go?
Dude. All right. Okay. So your first question, why doesn't he intervene? I'll answer that. And we can go down the rabbit hole, but I can tell you about my experiences in the streets as well. I can talk about stuff.
And I can just contextualize it really quick. And that is that there's a story I read of this group of they were historians, sociologists, these people who wanted to make a documentary on the healings and I believe it was exorcism.
Okay. In deliverance.
And this was a backwoods type area. It was another country. They didn't speak the language, and they went and they brought a camera and they filmed the entire thing.
Yeah.
And this person went into convulsions at one point. There was different yowls and anyway.
Yeah.
What you're going to get when you have people who don't know how to treat mental illness, who set an expectation for what this is supposed to be, and then people act that out.
Yeah.
And on the airplane, they start talking about it. Hey, you know what? I actually think I heard some Latin in there. Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah, totally. I totally heard them speaking Greek and ancient Greek and Latin. And did you see they came off the ground a little bit? Well, just for a minute, and by the time they got home, this person had levitated off the ground. They had spoken in different languages. They had, you had this massive exorcism experience, and really it has nothing to do with, they didn't lie to themselves. Right. But because of the plasticity of our memories, because of the way that we catalog things, when they went back and they watched the film, it was incredibly disappointing because it didn't match their memories. And so I know that in my experience, I grew up a Christian. I've seen things that I thought were miracles. And then upon reflection, I realized for me that they fell within a bell curve, and that bell curve was entirely explainable by the natural world and wishful thinking. And so as you kind of talk about your story and what you experienced, what I'm going to do is the only thing I can do is compare that to my own lived experience and go, okay, what did Nick do? Maybe there's something that he did that could clarify that for me. So I'm going to be looking for things while you're talking that might inform me. So from there, go ahead.
Yeah, just going back to your first question about the name of my program, that's it. That was the catalyst behind it. Is I want to go with an atheist to watch it. What circle? That's so. And Miracles and Atheists is it's eye catching, right? So I guess from a marketing perspective, it's not a bad title.
No, not at all.
So, yes, just went with it. And the fact that there's always an atheist in some way that has somebody that has experienced a miraculous thing from what they consider, it worked. I'm sorry, what was your question again? Story?
So
what I see?
Yeah, you said you went for 2 years to look for miracles. And my question was, what did you experience? And then I contextualized that with the context that I'm bringing to the table.
Perfect. So I completely agree with you as far as our imagination, and certainly on the receiving end, a healthy dose of placebo, a massive contributor to what could be perceived as a miracle. And so internal pains is one of those things where you're like, it's hard for me to come at you with, hey, look, this person had severe back pain. I put my hand on their back and they said it was completely gone. For me, that wasn't good enough. Sure. Like I saw plenty of that type of stuff, Eric, but for me, it wasn't good enough. I wanted something more tangible that had to be, if someone like yourself were to ask me the question, I'd either have to be lying or completely delusional.
I disagree. I disagree entirely. I think you can honestly, truly believe something and that thing not be true. And out of the two things that you just described, that's not an option that you're giving yourself. It's the same way that when somebody calls in and wants to talk about the lunatic liar Lord argument. Yeah.
Oh, wait, what was it again?
Lunatic liar Lord. Did you ever hear that one?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not breaking away or trying to kick down what people say that they experienced, because even retroactively it's whether or not their experience maps to reality. Right. So I mean, in a very, very basic way, I could take magic mushrooms, or something like that, and I can experience an altered state of reality. That doesn't mean that reality itself was altered, but the experience that I had is one of altered reality. And so what I need to do is affirm the experience that, I went through that, and I'm not lying to you.
Right.
I honestly came to that. But that doesn't mean that it matches reality. Or there are cult leaders. There are plenty of people who've left cults and went, you know what? I understand that person was a charlatan. They've been exposed, but I've seen them do miracles with my own two eyes, and there is no explanation for it. They're not lying, and they're not crazy. They honestly believe it. It's just, yeah.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. So please don't take me. If I challenge an idea, I don't want you to take me challenging that as asserting one of the two options you gave. Because if I'm disagreeing about whether or not it's true, it doesn't mean I think you're crazy. I can believe that you believe it. I just might disagree on whether or not, that's kind of how it went down.
No, that's great. And thanks for clarifying that. And I wasn't really going along the lines of what you were saying. It was sort of along the lines of what I had to see for myself, that something that would warrant one of the two responses that I gave you. Now, I didn't really think of the fact, how you just described it. One of the very first tangible thing
Sure.
That I experienced was we started out going to like the 7-Eleven parking lot because I'm like, there's a lot of character in the 7-Eleven. Let's go. Let's see if they need prayer in Jesus, Okay. So we did a lot of prayer and that kind of thing. And we end up, in this particular instance, it wasn't 7-Eleven, it was actually Walmart. We're hanging out in the lobby of Walmart. At this point, I started
pre-COVID.
After a couple of years back. Yeah, man, how things have changed. And so I started out just going out with just myself and another guy. I said, hey, I got this wild idea to go out and try to see miracles and pray for people on the streets, which I thought was interesting. When we talked yesterday, you're like, well, these conversations have been not with strangers, but with your friends. It kind of happen with strangers for me, Eric, because I'm doing wild stuff like going out on the streets. But
that is fair. That is fair.
Yeah.
If you're putting yourself out and proselytizing, you're going to get strangers. Absolutely. But so whether you're passive, like the way that I do it with people calling in, or active with the way you're doing it going out, it's definitely not an experience that everybody goes through, because not everybody is so excited about the subject that they want to go out.
Right.
So,
and by the way, I'll just add that I think it's actually a problem for the body of Christ. If you're not excited, then I believe something's wrong. With your,
you think so? I think that's kind of gatekeepy.
Kind of geeky?
Gatekeepy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can have plenty of Christians who just have other things to do.
There's distractions for sure.
Well, I don't know if it can. Anyway, sorry. Now I'm just nitpicking for no reason. I know. We're getting off topic.
We need to just have different episodes for all these one-off things that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
What I really wanted to talk, I'm just going to put it out there. What I really wanted to talk to you about today was, because you said, hey, come on and talk about any apologetic you want. I was like, yes. I want to talk about it, because hell is what you brought up, hell, and it really got the wheels turning for me on the Miracles and Atheists live stream. But I will tell you, let's stick with the miracle story, because I can talk about this stuff all day, man.
Well, you know what? But we are limited on time. If you want, we can shelve that and do another conversation. You want to talk about hell? I'm all ears. And so just,
I want to tell you one story though. I just started telling a story. Can I tell a story? You guys
Okay.
All right. So we're hanging out. In this point, the group had grown to around 6 or 7, and we're hanging out in the lobby of the Walmart local. Mm-hmm. And a woman walks by and says, hey, what are you doing? And we're like, oh, we're just here, people, say that. Not really. And so she goes, oh, well, will you pray for my mom? And we said, well, yeah. Where's your mom? And she was probably in her early 50s. She goes, oh, she's in the car. Will you come with me? Now, hold on a second. We got some people are going to follow this woman to her car. That's kind of shady. Why don't we just have some discernment here and maybe go in a pair or something and just hang back, Anyway, yeah. So we follow her to her car. Her mom's there, and she said she had bad knee pain. we said, okay, cool. Let's pray for her knee. So all of us are hanging back, right? And we're probably around 6 or 7 feet away. There was 2 people that were closer because they'd the prayer. I wasn't one of the ones that was closer. And so she starts going at very, like pretty much at the top of her lungs, Mom, these people want to pray for you. And so she had to shout for her mother to hear her, or even make some response to what's going on. And she goes, I'm sorry, my mom's hard of hearing.
Sure. And
so we got we said, well, can we pray for her ears? And that's what we ended up doing. I can't recollect she never got out of the car. So we did pray for her knee. I don't know what knee pain, but that's not really the point of the story. After one of the guys prayed for her ears, put her hands and just spoke to the ears, said, open up. She started hearing a little better, and he kept doing it. I think he prayed probably about 5 times, Eric. And after that time, talking to her like I'm talking to you now, 6 feet away, and she could hear me perfectly fine, and she was responding. And so that for me was the first tangible thing I had ever seen that I had trouble explaining away.
You know, what I would be very curious, did you keep in contact with them? Do you have their info?
This was my first time, Eric, man. It was my first time.
I'd follow up. Man, that would be.
I did. I gave her my email. And I said, I want to stay in contact with you. I didn't write down information. I said, I had these little cards right here. This is for the podcast. I had something similar for the street team. And I gave her one of these with my email on. I didn't give my phone number because I'm like, I don't really want strangers calling me, but I'll let them email me in case they wanted, they want to follow up. Because I think one of the issues, you meet people on the street, like they would need more interaction in the future. If, if your message resonated with them, I wanted to give them away. So I had my email on there, and I gave her that, and I fully expected her to contact me, brother, but she didn't. Not in this case, no.
So I would be remiss, and I know people in the comments would be yelling at the screen if I didn't ask about a success rate.
That's a really good question.
Because have you heard of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy?
No, I haven't.
No? Oh, it's good. It's good. Have you ever driven through Texas?
No. Well, I have flown in and driven from one town to the other, I guess. I drove from Houston to, I've driven through there, but not all the way. Okay.
Well, so there are just so many different, it's such a huge state, but you have these sprawling countrysides, and it can be beautiful. You just put on music and you cruise, and there's also a hill country, and the story, the way I tell it is that you're driving down the road, and you crest a hill and you look, and there's a barn, and that's just fine. You keep going, and there are other farms with other barns, and then you pass one, and it's got bullseyes all over it. Like someone had painted bullseyes all over it. And so you kind of slow down and you look, and there's an arrow smack in the middle of every single bullseye. And so you get out and you go and you knock on the door, and, hey, how did you do that? How are you such an amazing marksman? And they said, I'll show you. And so they went, they got their bow and arrow, and they shot the arrow at the barn. And then they walked up to it. They took out a paint can and they drew the bullseye around the arrow. And so when you are, because there's definitely a bias to it. And so if anything, I want to use this opportunity just to bring up, for people who are watching, the Texas sharpshooter fallacy is something that is so easy to fall into. And so what I would love, please, Nick, if you go back out and go and do more miracles, and experience more miracles, following up with them, seeing if, what you experienced or what they experienced is something that continued, or was temporary, what the success rate was, there are stories of people praying and then cancer going away.
Sure.
And so, but spontaneous remission is a thing. And so is it at the same rate of spontaneous remission, or is there an increase? Because so far it's kind of been right there in the static of margins of error. There hasn't been there's not a significant increase in prayer working from what I've seen.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons I'd put forth is that not enough people are doing it from the perspective of, okay, there's the way I used to pray when I was nominal or from my worldview, not a born again believer, just kind of going to church and doing my thing. I'd be like, please heal so-and-so from whatever thing they got going on. I might have even said something like, if it's in your will and you want to do this and they could go ahead and heal this person. But there was I always wonder, what's the purpose of praying and to do what he wants to do anyway? I asked that question a lot. I didn't really get it. Get into some of the denominations like the Southern Baptists, who are super sovereign kind of point of view, where God's going to do what he, like a Calvinist. And I don't want to speak for that, but the experience when they would challenge somebody that said, hey, it's always God's will, they would say, well, no, God's going to do what he wants to do in his sovereign will. He can, but he does what he wants to do. And so when I prayed in the past, from that perspective, I'm going to ask you, God, because I got to ask you, because I guess if I don't ask you, then you won't do it. Please heal this person. But what shifted for me was now I convinced myself, after digging things out in the scriptures and all that we're the vessels. It's our responsibility to go out and be our brother's keeper. And I mean, Mark 16 says, true, these are signs of those who believe. They'll cast out demons, they'll raise the dead, they'll cleanse the lepers.
You'll see them by their works. Yeah, you'll see them by their works.
Exactly. Yeah, and so, but there's just not a lot of responsibility in the body of Christ, and not a lot of folks that are willing to take a risk when it comes to prayer, I guess.
I mean, as somebody who truly believes, this is incredibly reminiscent of growing up. It is. I'm definitely used to hearing that kind of thing. I before we talk about hell, because I do want to talk about hell at least a little bit.
Sure.
I kind of want to ask you, if it wasn't God that made a positive change in your life, but it was you, would that make it less special?
Yeah, it would make it less special, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Because having that positive change in your family and in your life, those are wonderful. Why would it be less special? I mean, if that's too deep or too personal, that's just we can leave it.
That's fine. I've never been asked that and never really thought about it before. So this Christian walk, I guess I want to ask you a couple questions too about your perspective of Christianity. But probably one comment that I never realized, growing up and stuff, is this Christian walk is about dying to yourself, picking up your cross daily. It's not about you. We have a purpose. So you mentioned something about, there could be perfectly fine Christians who aren't all in. Man, after experiencing what I've experienced now, I don't see it that way anymore. And I'm not trying to be like the weirdo in your face Bible thumping. I'm not like that. But I'm just being transparent with you, man. It's like if you're not all in, you're not. If you're on the fence, you're not in. So that's the way that's kind of my world. That's my worldview.
I got you. I think just because of what I do, if I started defining to Christians what a Christian is, I would soon run out of people who want to talk to me. I let them define it, and that's your operating definition. So we'll go with that in this conversation.
Well, from what I wanted, and you asked me about success rates. I don't want to dodge any of your questions. So success rate on the streets and stuff. So there you start digging through, and I know you've read the Bible or even continuously read the Bible, I believe, from a certain perspective. There's two things that hinder, the healings and the miracles. There's two things: it's unbelief and the traditions of men. And so, from a success rate perspective, I believe it has to do with where you're at mentally. What works is what you believe works. And so success, like, there's not a formula. It's like, where were you at that particular time? I would say personally, Eric, I'm probably, when it comes to something wrong, if it's an internal pain way, like, you got to define what success is. You talked about defining terms. I think it's super important.
Absolutely.
So what makes cool? Like, how do you set up an experiment to test the supernatural? Like, that'd be a really interesting thing. And I think I would need the help of an atheist to put that together, to be honest with you, man.
I wouldn't.
Confirmation bias.
I would be super careful to make sure it's a skeptic, because there are plenty of atheists who believe in chakras and in crystal healing and all kinds of that stuff.
That's that really okay. So that I realized that I'm confused by that, Eric.
Yeah, well, because atheism, it's not a worldview. It's just the position on God. You can still have magical thinking and not believe in a God. It's just, okay, I'm just not one of them. I'm a skeptic.
Okay, so it's just like a mystic sort of world energy type thing. Is that what it is? There's atheists that believe in that sort of thing. Okay,
that feeling you have is the same feeling I get when I talk when people talk about their testimony. It's like, people believe that.
Yeah, I got you. No, that's the thing, and I'm thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
So, like, when you think of a Christian and the message, the Great Commission, what is your, like, how would you have shared the gospel in your Christian days? Like, what's the gospel to you? Because I want to understand, so I can.
You want me to put my Christian hat on?
Yeah. I want you to put I want to focus on the perspective, so make sure that we're kind of on the same page, at least terms and
sure.
So asking the atheist to share the gospel on your own show, that's kind of a weird thing to do.
No, that's okay, because it establishes my atheist bona fides as having come as a Christian, come from Christianity. So I can, we definitely viewed ourselves as separate, right, in the world, not of the world. But we also felt like we had that responsibility. So we did a lot of things that were community focused. We would, feed the homeless. We would, actually mostly feeding the homeless. That was the big one. Other things we did was just kind of, sports type things and all of that. But
that's what you did. But, like, what was the gospel to you guys? Like, what held it all together?
Well, I mean, the Bible, we took it from what we considered the Bible. Later on, I realized that it was very, very selectively chosen by our pastor for the message that he wanted to give. And as a pastor, you don't generally pick, Jesus cursing the fig tree very often, right? But you will pick a John 3:16. You will pick. If you want to talk to women, you've got Ruth, you've got.
Okay. So, so go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, so you're kind of, your experience and from what you're describing is it's something I kind of have a chip on about, is that right now the culture is, and I mean, it's breaking up obviously with the quarantines and people not being able to get together and keep the machine churning. But that's really what you have. You have a setting where a pastor speaks at a pulpit. There's music that plays beforehand. We have this sort of experience, what it looks like with the people. And then we receive a message, right? It's all about, I didn't like the music today. I don't like that pastor. I don't like the people. Me, right? And so you cater to keep butts in the seats and keep the machine churning. And because you're worried about your livelihood as a church.
Oh, no, my pastor would violently disagree.
Okay,
Violently
that's
disagree.
That's good.
That was not the case. No.
But you recognize that is the case for many.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lean not on your own understanding, and that was something that we very much were. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
But the thing was, there were a lot of things that we just let slide, and there are problems here. There are problems that could be really, really dangerous. And so it's worth investigating, so much so that I'm dedicating my life to making sure that people can see these conversations and hear and talk about it. Right. Because people can get taken advantage of. There are people who will forego medical treatment because they think that, their spiritual treatment and healing in the Word of God will fix them, heal them, and they'll be convinced. There are a lot of people who die thinking that God's going to come in at the last minute, and that's not the case. And even then, my pastor, I can tell you, had the parable of the person in the flood, right? I get it. You got to help yourself where you can. But even then, dude, when you have a mindset that something like that is going to happen, it's going to pop out in other places. And those things could be very dangerous.
What's an example?
Sure, absolutely. Anti-vax. How do you feel about anti-vaxxers?
You talking about vaccines?
Yep. People who think that vaccines cause autism.
Oh, well, the issues that my understanding of vaccines, Eric, for autism, I believe there's data out there that shows a correlation.
Actually, no, there's not. There's only ever been one study, and that was thoroughly and completely debunked. The thing is when it comes to testing, that age is right around the same time that you start diagnosing autism.
Perhaps.
But
so you're saying that one of the risks is not giving your kids vaccines because you believe that there's what, spiritual reason, or just what does that have to do with
absolutely faith? Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So here's the danger. The danger is, obviously your kid not getting vaccinated, but also you are doing serious damage to the parents. And I'll tell you why. If your child was born with a disability, and I worked in special ed for many, many years, this is something that is close to my heart. Yeah. And when you have a parent whose child was born with special needs, you adapt and you go, okay, this is my baby, and we're going to work from here. We're going to make sure that this is a fulfilled, happy life, and we're going to give them the best that we can.
Yeah.
What if you sat that parent down and said, no, your child wasn't born this way. You did this to them. Mm-hmm. You got them vaccinated. And the reason that they have special needs now is your fault.
Yeah, there'd be tremendous guilt there.
It is a level of suffering that I think is cruel beyond measure. It is painful and inhumane. It is something that sticks with people when I don't think they have the right. Not the right. I don't think that they should be carrying that burden. It's truly terrible. And I think there's a direct correlation there with the guilt and shame of talking about sin, of worrying about, sexual, issues when it comes to, there are so many thought crimes that come with the Christianity that I knew, and also with so many faith backgrounds. Dude, half of the 10 commandments are thought crimes. Half of them. Half of them.
Dude, I feel you on that, man. It doesn't seem fair at all.
And so whether or not that's true is incredibly important, because should you be putting yourself through that kind of hell?
I know I'm totally digging. I get your perspective and how that happened. I think you could also make the correlation. I'll just give one more maybe feather in your cap from that perspective, is that you can do that with healing as well, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I didn't have enough faith to heal that particular person, so now I'm going to put that on me.
That's exactly why I brought this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you.
Man.
I'm glad you brought it full circle.
Sure.
What you said was that if the healing doesn't happen, it's your fault. There are plenty of people who went to get healed, and they were suffering and continue to suffer. And instead of going, you know what, this is just a thing that we've got to deal with and move forward. Now it's a thing you have to deal with and move forward, and it's your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot there, man. I don't think we're going to talk about hell today, but that's okay.
No, we should talk about hell another day.
Yeah, we'll whet the appetites.
Go for
that conversation. Because I had a cool way I was going to lead up to that from what you had said on my podcast, but we'll do it, man. I can't wait to be back on. I never thought of that, man. I've never done this before. This is cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, so this is for people who are watching, this is a rare peek behind the scenes. Nick is positions himself as a host in a good way and lets other people talk. And so today we're getting into the mind of Nick Snapp. Sorry, go ahead.
For me to do this on your platform is even more strange. So I'll say this, man. Goodness. So let me go back to my first question with you about what's the gospel. So from my perspective, the gospel, the good news, it's the good news, right? It's not bad news, it's good news. And that Jesus came to save me from my sins. He didn't come to save me from hell. He came to save me from my sins. And when he crossed and rose from the dead, that's really the crux. If it's not that, that's the hinge point for Christianity happen, then Christianity is false and everything else doesn't even matter. So I think the things about now are important, but they're kind of fringe. They're like, that's the crux of it. And so faith in Jesus, become a new creation, like I talked about earlier, and there's a change. And so I'll tell you this, from the perspective, it seems unfair to beat myself up when I look at that woman who's not my wife's skirt and there's a lust. Oh, wow. So I got to sit there and beat myself up. Dude, I
had an accountability partner, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. That's admirable. But I'll tell you, Eric, man, you can have all the accountability in the world, but I went to church for 37 years and I didn't do anything different. I go to Bible study on Wednesday nights and I talk with my friends on the weekend. Like no difference in me and the world. And then everything changed. And so what, like the skirt example or the evil thought, like, oh wow, I'm just standing there talking to somebody else and I get this thought of like slashing their throat. Like it's not something that happens to me, but I'm saying that could happen to people. All of a sudden there's condemnation.
Actually, it's called an aberrant thought. And as far as psychology is concerned, everybody has them actually.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so there's explanations from psychology and spiritual explanations as well. I would just say that, dude, I don't have that condemnation anymore. I did before when I thought I was a Christian. It just went away. Like okay. Should I be looking at a woman that's not my wife? According to God's standard, no. Do I beat myself up now if I laid hands on a person and fully expected them for their eyesight to come back, whatever, and it didn't happen? There's a level of I don't know. I don't want to call it spiritual maturity because I don't know, man. But it just, I don't have that. I don't have those issues anymore because Jesus came to save me from my sins. And so like, yeah, these things will happen, but it's not like I indulge like I used to. Like and I'm not saying I'm perfect, Eric. Like I'm not at all by any means.
Nobody is.
I don't have that condemnation, and I can see totally from your perspective, like it doesn't seem right. It's not, why should you put that burden on you? But like, dude, I look at it like, honestly, the opposite. It's a freedom that I never had before until 4 years ago.
Well, so there are two parts to that. And I know that we're running a little late, but, the two parts that I really have to bring to that are, number one, this is going to sound really, really mean, but I mean it in the nicest possible way as a content creator. Yeah. Whether or not you feel good about it, this is something that you are sharing with the world. They're not you. And the other
Right.
is that there are lots of people who will say that, I feel better because I've been saved.
Yeah.
My immediate example is a murderer. Somebody murders a child, they go to prison,
Right.
and they get saved. They feel way better now. They don't feel bad about it anymore. That's good.
Yeah.
Did they have to apologize? No. Did they have to apologize? No. Does it make what they did go away? No. But they feel better about it now, and really it helps them get through the day. And I understand that, that you've got to get through the day, but I think that your responsibility first is to the aggrieved party. And
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said, man. Like, if they get saved and now they feel better about it, like, dude, there's somebody that needs to be there like that. If they're just kind of, man, if they haven't made that, if they haven't repented and gone through that process of acknowledging and owning that act, then and I don't want to sound self-righteous, but like, there's something wrong with your experience of being saved, man. It's not what the Christian walk's all about.
at that point, I got to tell you, it's a very small club. Depending on how picky God is, there are only going to be a few people getting voiped up to heaven.
Eric, and then, dude, that is the honest truth, man. And so when I had, and again, I'm talking from my Christian worldview, so your audience can take it however they want to take it. I'm just trying to speak and with just transparent as I can, and the fallout is what it will be.
Sure.
But when I realized, after 7 years of going through the motions, praying the prayer without any trust, doing things the way that I'd always done them, and not having any trust, I at least 50 of the church, at least 10%, probably more like 60 or 70. And so with that realization, Eric, from the perspective of what does it really mean to be a Christian, if we have a goal of a Great Commission, which is hard enough to spread the good news of the gospel, now we have 70% of the church potentially to use the message. So for me, it was kind of like a horrifying thing for me to go through that experience and realize, wow, I'm sitting next to people that, then that's just a great segue for hell, right?
Go for it.
So now you have people that are the way and don't even know it. And so what do you do about that? And that's the conundrum that we should probably talk about at some point.
I agree. The last time you and I talked about it, I believe I said, would you lock your child in the basement and burn the house down?
Hold that thought. Are you ready? Listen.
Anything your child could do that would make you want to lock them in the closet and set the house on fire?
No.
Yeah.
I think Nick definitely has a better morality than your God.
Well, yeah, that's really good.
Love it. Oh, that's going to blast people's ears out. I'll do my best to compress that. Yeah.
That question right there, that really got so I used to come out of our conversations, not just with you on that live stream, because I was so new to this whole thing, just exhausted, like I was wiped. And I had a lot to think, a lot to process. Mm-hmm. You made the comment about hell. You also asked the question about, is there sin in heaven? I was so glad not to be in the position of the guest, because I, at the time, would have had a tremendously hard time answering that. And it's not an easy question at all, but these are questions that I'd never even processed. And so and now I kind of have the desire for these tough questions, because I think one thing you and I could probably agree on. Let me speak English. I don't have the vocabulary of the atheists I used to fear.
Oh, stop.
But no, I think we could agree that we've got to be okay with truth. We've got to be truth seekers, and if something on the lines that determines beyond the shadow of a doubt that it's untrue, then we've got to be okay with that, because we got to be okay with truth and and not a story that we've conjured up in our own minds.
No matter how well intentioned, by the way.
Yes.
And no matter how honestly held. And I coming from your side of things, that's incredibly refreshing. I don't see that a lot. And I want to exemplify that on this side as well. I want to know as many true things and as few false things as I can.
That's right. I love that statement. I think I've heard you say that in one of your other shows. I love that statement. One of the kind of the tagline for Miracles and Atheists is like we're truth seekers and storytellers unpack the tension between different worldviews of the supernatural, because there's a tension there that doesn't necessarily need to be there, but it's there and we've got to deal with it. And we could deal with it productively, or we could get puffed up and arrogant, which kind of means you're out of line with, from a Christian perspective, you're out of line with what God's will is.
That might be from Nick's perspective, but I appreciate it all the same. Let's go with that.
Ego's an issue no matter what you represent.
As a view for your show, I think that's fantastic going into it. If people want to see me on your show, we are going to have a talk about, what's the subject?
Civil discourse.
And it's going to be a multi-person panel. So I know Nick's show is new, but I've got a lot of hope for him. Nick, thank you for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Take care, my man.
You too.
All right. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Click here to subscribe. If you want to get early access to content, you can go to my Patreon right here. I put out episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you want to watch the Q&A that V and I did live on Monday, because we came out as a couple on Talk Heathen, click right here. Bye, everybody.